Is this really the time to talk about it? Yeah, okay. I think we have to have a conversation about this. It was inevitable, right? The Vancouver Canucks are not in the playoffs, and the way things look, Money Puck has them at a 1% chance of making the playoffs. You know, I'm starting to think they're just not gonna make it. I don't know if that's a hot take at this point, but, yeah, Canucks are not gonna make it. So, what do we look forward to now? Now that the team is not in the playoff hunt, let's talk about the draft lottery. Yeah, let's fire it up, baby. So, this will just be a status update video. No real analysis or whatever. Let's talk about the Vancouver Canucks and their lotto odds, because if you head over to tankathon.com, you will see that Vancouver is currently ranked in the 15th overall spot in the draft. You know, I feel like it's tough being a fan of a sports team, at least in the NHL. I don't know if other sports leagues have the same structure, but at least in the NHL, it's kind of difficult to be a fan of a team that's right in the middle. Not good enough to make the playoffs, not bad enough to have a really good draft position. You're just kind of floating around in the realm of mediocrity. Teams like the Minnesota Wild, for example, have been hovering in this territory for years, never able to break through into being a totally undisputed top-tier team, but never bad enough to draft super high in the draft, therefore not really getting the high draft capital picks in order to take that next step. And then there are some teams that are kind of on the extremes of both sides. You've got the Tampas that can't seem to stop winning, and the Sabres that can't seem to stop losing. Vancouver, for the first time in a while, made the playoffs last year and pushed their draft position all the way down to who knows and who cares because they traded away their first-round pick for Elias Lindholm. But it was about a decade ago where Vancouver hockey became so bad that we started to see top draft picks. Jake Virtanen was 6th overall. The next season, the Canucks were good, and they ended up making the playoffs, lost to Calgary, and they drafted 23rd. They took Brock Besser. The year after, Olli Juolevi at number 5, then Pettersson at number 5, then Quinn Hughes at number 7. And then the Canucks started to get a little bit better. They traded away some first-round picks, thank you Jim Benning, and then they took Lekaramaki and Villander, both in the top 15 of the 2022 and 2023 drafts. So Vancouver has kind of been in this range for a while now. And when you think about Tankathon having the Canucks at the 15th overall spot, if you want to talk about the lottery, oh yeah, this is where things get a little bit bad, because Vancouver, as it stands right now, with their 81 points in 75 games played, they currently have a 0% chance of drafting first overall. That's because teams that are in the 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 range are not actually eligible to get first overall. You're only allowed to move up 10 spots. So if the Vancouver Canucks win a lottery, right now, the way things are, the highest they can go is to 5th overall, overtaking Seattle, Philly, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, everybody else in that span. Vancouver has a 0.5% chance of winning a lottery. So that ultimately makes things a lot more difficult, because you want to talk about Vancouver's 1.9% chance being impossible to make the playoffs? Well, they have a 1 in 200 chance of getting a draft lottery win and going from 15th to 5th. Now, who exactly are the prospects available Vancouver could take in the 15-ish range of this upcoming draft? I'm going to be honest, I don't know. And I think it takes a certain kind of person to be able to say, I don't know, because I just unfortunately haven't been paying attention too much to the prospects this year. In previous years, it was really easy. Hey, Montreal sucked. Hey, Detroit sucked. Hey, Vancouver was kind of hovering around being bad the whole season, so we could talk about draft picks all day long. We did that for years, and now my Wings are on the outside of the playoffs looking in, my Canadiens are in the playoffs, and my Canucks are starting to open up the conversation on the draft lottery. So whomever it is the Vancouver Canucks take in the 15th overall spot in this upcoming draft, we'll talk about that guy and go over his production and his projection later on. I just kind of wonder, you know, Vancouver is in this spot, they're in this territory of potentially getting a 15th overall pick. If they win a draft lottery and they go to 5th overall and they have a chance of taking a Porter Martone or a Hagens or a Michael Misa or somebody, okay, Misa's not going to be available at 5. Let's be real here. If they end up taking any of these guys, then those are good impact players that the Canucks could take, elite guys. But just thinking about Vancouver's projection and what their path seems to be at the moment, would it not be another possibility for Vancouver to flip said 1st overall pick for some other guy that can help out their team right now? I mean, no disrespect to Anton Frundell, for example, but he's a guy that's probably not going to make the NHL next year or even the year after. He's probably taking a season in the SHL and then maybe heading over to the National Hockey League in a limited capacity the year after and then maybe being an AHL guy. So Vancouver, if they're trying to execute this plan, this let's keep Quinn Hughes in Vancouver and have him sign a long-term deal plan, if they have that plan in place, would it not be appropriate for Vancouver to trade the 15th overall pick or the 5th overall pick if they win a lottery because they have a 1 in 200 chance of doing that? If they trade that pick for a guy now, is that not more likely? With Patrick Allvin and Rutherford at the helm, they want to be competitive. They might have only 1 year left to Rick Tocchet, depending on if he doesn't want to extend. Francesco Aquilini was ranked one of the worst owners in the NHL, literally second last, and he wants this team to make the playoffs because he wants playoff revenue? I mean, it's just kind of a mixed bag here of emotions, thinking about the team not being good enough to sustain playoff caliber play out of their guys, and not being bad enough to get a good draft position. I don't know, man. Like, will we see the Vancouver Canucks get a pretty reasonably good draft pick this year? I will say, all these teams past 10th overall, they're all hovering around the same points percentage and same point production as well, so Vancouver does have a chance of slipping and maybe falling to 13 or 12th overall in the NHL draft this year if they lose, right? If they keep on losing and they get some support from teams like New York and Columbus and Utah, if those teams start winning more, which they have been as of late. New York's won 2 in a row, Utah 2. Vancouver's lost 3 in a row. So there is a chance that Vancouver stumbles down the standings a little bit more. If they ultimately fall out of the playoff wildcard race to an even more significant capacity, then they could get a top 12 pick. It's possible. I just don't want to go out there and say that it's realistic at this point that the Canucks even use the draft pick. Heck, you know what I was thinking about? If they drop to 12th, then they have a much higher chance of getting a better draft pick. Their odds of winning the lottery go from 0.5% to about 2.5%. So they would actually, what, pentuple? That's not that bad. That pick becomes a lot more valuable at 12 versus 15, and if the Canucks win the lottery, they get the 2nd overall pick. Firstly, that'd be the highest pick they'd ever had, because they'd never had 1st overall before. They only had it for a brief moment in 1999 before trading it away, but they'd never selected a guy first. They would have tied for getting a 2nd overall guy. If you take Michael Misa 2nd overall and he's able to come to the NHL right away, maybe you don't need to make the trade. Or maybe you do make the trade and you get somebody who's really, really good and some extra depth pieces too. Who really knows? I don't know. There are a number of things that you could think about if you get a pick that's that high up in the draft. But Vancouver, knowing the Canucks luck, hey, they slipped from 2nd to 5th in 2017. They took Elias Pettersson there. Colorado slipped from 1st to 4 in that year. They took Cale Makar. The NHL draft lottery is not kind to these teams. But we'll see what happens as the days and weeks go on. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Vancouver Canucks and their draft lottery odds, whether or not you think this is really worth talking about, and whether or not you think it's actually something that we can focus on, because Vancouver may or may not trade the pick away. Who knows? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.